2 months ago, in the middle of the night, I received a call from one of my community managers in Haryana. He sounded frantic, he sounded scared. He said that there had been an attack in one of our schools, that a local community gang had come in, ripped off the chalkboards, burned our books, threatened our teachers, and scared the students. The last two things I remember him telling me is that no one was coming to learn. Everyone was too scared. In May of last year, I packed up my bags, withdrew from all my classes from the fall semester, left my friends, my family, and even said bye to Netflix to start a nonprofit called Equality Initiative, an organization focused on community-based education. Now, during my time there, I met a lot of people. I encountered several stories. And in those stories, a lot of their struggles. And I want to share two of them with you today. Gavi, an 11-year-old child belonging to the rag picker community of New Delhi, India. He, his family, his community work abnormally long hours, 18 hours a day, picking up trash. They wake up at 4:30, they're out by 5, working until the sun is at its highest, until 10 or 11. They come back, they eat, they take a nap, and they're out by 2 or 3, working until midnight. Because of this lifestyle, they're only able to make and not properly access education. Because of this lifestyle, him, his family, his community are illiterate. They don't have time to go to school. Shakuntala. I met Shakuntala 450 kilometers away from New Delhi, India. She lived on the outskirts of a village on top of a trash mound. All she owned to herself was a sari, a tarp, a cot, a radio, and a blouse. She was a widow, she was illiterate, and she fit the means and criteria for government rations and housing, but because of her illiteracy, she was never able to get them. Now, these are only two stories, two struggles out of millions. What's really scary is that according to a UNESCO report, there are 800 million adults that are illiterate. On top of that, there are 122 million children that are illiterate as well. That's 1 billion people. 1 in every 7 person you'll meet will be illiterate. Now I want you to do me a favor. Think about 3 nonprofits that you've either been involved in, that you've donated to, or that you've heard of. Does everyone have one? Now, out of those 3, one of them, there's a high probability, will be related to, directly or indirectly, to education. We have thousands of nonprofits focused on education, yet the problem still exists. There's still 1 billion people out there illiterate. So we decided that there were obvious problems and barriers that existed, and we needed to solve them. So my team and I, we went out in North India. We started asking questions. We sent out questionnaires, trying to figure out what those barriers were that restricted education. And throughout our research, we came up with 5. Distance, from where the student traveled from his home to the school. Timing of the school hours. The pace or learning environment of the school in itself. The comfort level between the teachers and the students. And the price of education in itself. So now we had those problems that existed, that were acting as barriers. We wanted to do something different. Because, again, thousands of these nonprofits had already existed, that same idea of challenging and tackling that issue. But we wanted to figure out new ways to approach it, new mediums. And thus we started Equality Initiative. Now, Equality Initiative tackles each of these 5 problems differently. Distance. Imagine waking up at 6:30 in the morning, brushing your hair, brushing your teeth, putting on your school uniform, but wait, you only put on your shirt. You put on shorts instead because as soon as you get out of your door, you're going to have to cross a river and you don't want your pants to get wet. Or think about this. You brush your hair, you brush your teeth at 6:30 in the morning, you go out, and instead of wearing your school uniform, you wear old and dirty clothes because you're going to have to walk 8 miles down a mountain to get to one of your classes. That was a distance problem. And we wanted to bridge that. So we decided to send teachers to students in rural villages, to impoverished households. Literally, education at their doorstep. Timing. Now, normally schools are 6 to 8 hours long, depending on where you go. And in a normal household, especially in impoverished households, everyone contributes to the income. They don't have 6 to 8 hours to give to schooling. So we decided that we would only offer classes for 2 to 3 hours. And we told them that whenever, whether that was at midnight or 6 a.m. in the morning, we would offer them to make it the most accessible as we could. Third, the pace or learning environment. Because of such a competitive level in schooling today, we're supposed to learn 6 to 7 subjects. We focused only on 3. English, math, and a regional language. So if you were in North India, you would be learning Hindi. If you were in coastal India, you would be learning Telugu, Tamil. If you were in Sri Lanka, Sinhalese, and if you were in Nepal, Nepali. And then the comfort level. In such a restrictive society, it's very difficult to have a relationship between a teacher and a student that helps. So we decided to find teachers. We tried our best to find teachers from within the community. So we would establish that comfort level. And 5, the price. Because of middle class expanding in South Asia, the price of education has skyrocketed. In fact, it takes $65 to send a child to boarding school in India. And then the same price for Equality Initiative, you can sponsor one teacher's salary for a month. And that teacher can go on to teach 25 to 30 students. So now, we had these problems and we had somewhat solved them. We were like, this is a brilliant idea. Let's go implement this. But there was one problem. We didn't know if other people thought it was brilliant as well. So we started a campaign. We decided to spread the word of Equality Initiative and what we wanted to do. And slowly, I started talking to village leaders. We did a door-to-door campaign in villages that we deemed needed this education. We would talk to village leaders, going house by house, saying, Equality Initiative wants to provide education. In a little time, there was a great feedback. The elders wanted to be part of it. The youth wanted to be part of it. But I realized something very important. If you really want to get stuff done, you need to talk to the women of the household. Because that's where they really get things done. And I did. And we set this relationship where we would have intimate conversation and I would pitch the idea to them. And they were on board. And slowly, these conversations and these door-to-door campaigns turned into conversations and dialogues on a larger scale. Community speeches where illiteracy rates were the highest. We would talk to them the important value of education. Now, while I gave these speeches, I started hearing about a movement, the Naxalite Movement. The Naxalite Movement is basically an ingrown terrorism unit in India that has revolted against the government. I got curious. I wanted to know why. What drove these people to such extremes that they would revolt against their own government and pick up arms? So I decided to find out. I traveled to Odisha, which is in the middle of the Red Corridor, where the Naxalite movement is the strongest. And I stayed with some of the villagers there. While I was there, I learned a lot of things and I saw a few things. One day, I came out of one of the villages, of the huts that we were staying at, and outside were women. And they had to choose between whether they wanted to cover their top part or their bottom, because that's how poor they were. That they didn't have enough money to buy clothes to cover themselves properly. At night, I would go and see what they would have for dinner, and they would hunt wild boars because they didn't have anything else to eat. So when people ask me why I do this, or when I have 3 midterms and a paper due the next day, and at 2 o'clock I get a call to interview a teacher, and I want to say no, every time I think about those people. And the idea that if I can give education to them, then maybe, somehow, they can have a better access to an upgraded lifestyle. Now, I want to talk to you about our progress. 7 months since we've started, we're reaching out to 500 students with almost 30 teachers. Our youngest student is 6 years old, and our oldest ranges from 69 to 70, a whole diversity of students. And if there's something that I've learned throughout this, it's that you don't need to have a revolutionary or new idea. Because if you find new mediums, new methods to implement those same ideas, it can be just as beneficial. I've also learned that sometimes you'll have failures. Shakuntala died 9 days after I met her after catching pneumonia. Equality Initiative couldn't help her. At the same time, you'll have success stories as well. Gavi, who I mentioned earlier, who only learned for 3 months in our community-based educations. He was able to catch on Hindi, math, and a little bit of English. Gavi now works at a medical dispensary shop in New Delhi, India, earning $10 a day. Now, before he earned less than $1. That's an incredible upgrade of lifestyles. Not only for him, but his family. So what's the future? Equality Initiative is a community-based, community-driven, and student-focused, student-driven nonprofit. Our aim in the next 3 years is to be sending 500 teachers in 10 different countries. And I promise you, we're going to try our level best to achieve that. But if there is something that I want you all to take away from this talk, is that in reality, we might not have the answers or the solutions to the problems that exist today, whether that's education equality, poverty alleviation, or even cancer. But we have the resources, we have the potential and the capability to get one step closer to finding those answers, to finding those solutions. And if we do that, someday soon, someone will pick up where we left off and find those answers and find those solutions, and we should keep trying. Thank you.